Young Stephanie Victor started off in Ames, Iowa. My parents were in school there, and I lived the first few years of my life in Iowa. Then we moved to Pittsburgh. My little brother was born in Pittsburgh, and right away we were born into the Steeler world. We love the Steelers, we love the Penguins. And we moved back to Iowa for a few years, and then back to Pittsburgh, and I lived in Pittsburgh until I went to college.
Was it just you and your brother?
Mm-hmm.
What's that sibling relationship like?
Okay, he won't mind me sharing this. Actually, you have to interview him at some point, because to get the flip side will be really interesting. There's 4 years difference between my brother and I. And by the time I was 4, I had already pretty well decided what my career goals were, which included moving to Hollywood and becoming an actor. At the time, Drew Barrymore did Firestarter and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I can do such a better job than that. And my parents, kind of like, oh, this firstborn, wild, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, wants to go to Hollywood. I ruled the roost, if that's how you say that. And when my brother was born, yeah, I knew a baby was coming. I didn't know that that meant the attention got diverted to someone else. And the bringing him home, my mother's side of the family is Native American, and my brother was very dark. Now I take after my dad's side of the family. So he came home, and he had dark skin and dark hair, and I took one look at him and I said, that's not my brother. That's the wrong kid. He's dark. It's like, send him back. And all the friends and family came over, and there was a huge party to welcome home the baby. And that was not cool. No one was watching my performances or dancing. So I certainly made my position known, and I went under the dining room table and proceeded to stay there until I got enough people at the party paying attention to me. And, that's kind of how it started off. And it wasn't long until I discovered that, wait, my mom is holding the baby and feeding the baby and changing the baby. That's exactly what I do with my dolls. This is a live version of a plaything. This could actually work out well. And he became mine. Like, I took that baby, like, my brother, like he was my baby at 4 years old. And as my brother tells it, he said, I didn't need to speak for the first 5 years of my life because my sister answered everything for me. And literally, if you put us side by side, you would go, hello, are those two related? Because I'm the light, he's the dark. I'm the loud and crazy talkative, and he's the quiet, shy, very sensitive. My brother is an incredibly sensitive person, and we had a great time growing up as kids. One memory that I have that he doesn't like to recall so fondly is when I used him as a sled. My mother, we were in Pittsburgh, there's not a huge elevation, but we would always be dressed for the worst snow conditions ever. And so he was in a one-piece snowsuit, which is very slippery material. And he had fallen at one point at the top of the hill on his stomach, and then I sat down on his back and he started to go. And then he became my sled. But I didn't always control his life. I did have to let him go and grow and become his own person. And my brother and I are incredibly close. I love him very much. When my accident happened, my brother was in Colorado. He was living in Durango, a life that a lot of us would envy because he just skied. He was a ski bum, I think, is the official term. And he got the call in the middle of the night, and he had to drive to Denver, and there was a snowstorm, and he had slept in the airport. Finally got on a plane and got to LA. And he he didn't know anything about, he is just like, your sister was in a really bad car accident, she's hurt really bad, she's in surgery, she's in intensive care. You just need to get there, because the word was not good that I would live. And so my dad and brother were frantically trying to get across the country, my dad from Pennsylvania. And when my brother first saw me in ICU, I looked bad. I looked really bad. And, you know, completely black and blue, blood still in my hair. And, you know, the most obvious thing is that I'm laying in a bed and there's a blanket over me, and you can tell through the blanket that I don't have legs anymore. And I had tubes in my throat. I was, you know, on that machine, life-saving device. And my brother came in, and he's looking at me, and he's quiet, and I, you know, I'm glazed over and looking at him. And my immediate reaction was, I mouthed to him over the tube. I said, "Merry fucking Christmas." Why I said that, I don't know, and you'll probably have to edit that out of the video. But he started to dance, and he's like, "She's okay, she's okay." Because, you know, the overwhelm of my legs being gone was manageable, knowing that who I was still intact. My sense of humor was there, my brain was somewhat functioning to try to crack a joke. And my brother starts dancing around the ICU, and he looks at me and he's like, "You know what you can do? You can ski." And I'm going, "What?" I'm in California. I'm thinking water ski. What is he talking about? And he said, no, you can snow ski. These guys are in these mono skis, and I've seen them like bailing off cornices in Crested Butte through powder snow, and we can ski together. Like, so the next chapter was already written for him, that I would move to Colorado and be a ski bum with him, and we would, and little did I know how right he was, you know, but he was the one who put skiing in my mind. And now, you know, skiing is, it is the through line in my family. It's an integral part of Marcel's family, what Marcel and I do, and it's now, you know, my dad started to learn skiing at 50 to keep up with his 2 kids, and we do it all together, and they've been to every Paralympic Games, and it's so great that we get to ski together. You know, it's really, it's cool.
You're,
Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, every now and then.
I'm moving too much. See, I get all,
But that's okay. No, I want you to. I'd rather move the mic.
then be like,
Yeah. Can you take a look? I think you know how to run it. It's a speech thing. If not.
did I think I knocked it off all together. It's in my armpit,
Okay,
Bart.
that's fine. Well, it worked out. It wasn't bad. I heard it all, but I. Can you do that one more time for your brother?
God, that sounds
yeah,
like,
Mark,
That
it's
was
all
it.
usable though, right?
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's all usable. That was fantastic.
And just shoot me the time code when you get back.
Okay.
what is it, the full moon that I'm like so emotional, or
No,
it's
it's
you
great.
guys, you bring out the emotion? No, me too. It's you guys.
Yeah. What's the time code?
8:15.
That, now I apologize, because I did forget to give you those pictures from ICU, but I have the photo album.
The accident later, but I want to hear wonderful description, and it's great to hear your relationship with your brother. Tell me about your early years before you started shaping your own life, and your parents, how they affected you, you know, during the formative years, if you will, before you went out and started seeing the world on your own.
I would describe my dad as, my parents were both very young when they had me. My mom was 19 and my dad was 21. I don't think that makes me an accident, but they were very young. And my mom, incredibly full of life. I mean, my mom is like, I looked up to her so much as a child, because when I grew up in the 70s, there was this whole movement of women can do anything and be anything. You can wear a construction hat. You can work a jackhammer, you know. That was like in our schoolhouse rock growing up. And I would look to my own mother, and she provided me that inspiration. My mother was a fitness person. She had her own career. She was an entrepreneur. She built an incredible business. But the one characteristic that I love so much about my mother is whenever we would go out in public, she always had a really incredible way of connecting with people. We would be in the grocery line, and she'd be talking to the cashier, and suddenly they're exchanging phone numbers, and my mom's giving her a Mary Kay facial. And I just like, so as a child, my parents modeled for me behaviors, manners, morals. These things were very important to me. I saw that the world was changing around me as a very young person, and I felt very strongly aligned to my parents and my grandparents' position that no matter what, you be honest, you play fair, you pick up after yourself, you follow the golden rule. These things were instilled upon me at a very early age. My mother, through her business, also did a lot of motivational speaking. She took me to meet Zig Ziglar when I was 9 years old. My book that I did a report on was Zig Ziglar's See You at the Top, and I'm showing his autographed copy to my fourth grade class, and they're like, okay, who is that? And I'm like, here are the ladders of success. I was just emulating my mother, because I saw what she did and the magic she possessed and the vitality that she had in front of a room. And most importantly, it was always connected to the intention of making a difference with people, making a difference in the world. And I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be like my mother. I also wanted to be like my dad. My dad, as my brother said when he was 4 years old, my dad is a lamb steak architect. He meant to say a landscape architect, and I wasn't speaking for him at that point. My father has his own business as an architect, and he works primarily in landscaping. So as children, he instilled in us a profound love for nature. I remember going to Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water in Pittsburgh and planting trees and, okay, kids, come on, let's get outside and trim the hedges. And my brother was like, forget that, my type A sister, she can help you with the yard work. And I did. My dad and I did a lot of work together. As a kid growing up, this was, we had chores, we had responsibilities, and it was very important to me to show up and do what was asked of me in the way that they were asking. It's not to say that I was perfect, and I certainly spent my time in my room and was cut off from the phone and all the talking back and things that I did wrong, but the foundation there was that I loved my parents. I respected them very much, and I wanted to grow up and be like them because I thought they are polite, good-natured, not too serious people. In the hospital, I remember my mom saying to me, she was devastated by my accident. And she had said to me, I failed you as a mother because I did nothing to prepare you for something this bad. And I said, no, Mom, you absolutely succeeded me because everything you taught me was to take no matter what you get and deal with it, make it good, give thanks, and move forward. And that's how I'm going to get through this. My parents being there in the beginning that was the most important thing for me because that drive I had as a child to want their approval, I wanted their approval after my accident. I wanted to recover from losing my legs and all of this in a way that would make them proud. And didn't he say this is a light, carefree fun? As we all need therapy after this.
I think you did. I'm sure you made him proud. So, while we're on the subject here.
What's your favorite YouTube video? He's a cat.
Yeah.
Flushing the toilet, he's a cat.
I think you certainly touched on the people around you during the accident. How about you? When everything happened, whatever you're comfortable with, what happened and what you went through to kind of get through it.
My accident happened December 19th, 1995. I was simply going out to dinner, and I was standing in the driveway behind my ex-boyfriend's car. He wanted to play a song for me, so I had come around to the back of his vehicle, and it's the old-fashioned way, we were putting the CD in, and I had hugged him, and as soon as I let go of the embrace, I felt this, I heard a noise and felt an impact. It's hard to distinguish what was what, because when something like that happens, to my memory, it's in slow motion and all very fast at the same time. I was hit by a car and crushed into the back of his vehicle and pinned between the two cars. I was dragged up the sidewalk about 15 feet. And when the cars stopped, I was kind of on the edge of both bumpers. So the cars slid apart and I fell on the ground. Michael was not hit. As soon as I hit the ground, that soccer player in me, it's like, you get knocked down, what do? You get back up. And I went to jump back up, and I was absolutely thrown into complete shock to see, my right heel up by my ear. And it's like, whoa, it was like Platoon and all these, war movies that I've seen, like, I just stepped on a landmine, oh God, what happened here? And as I laid there on the ground, tons of people started to gather. And I just was looking up at the sky and saying my phone number out, like, will you guys call my mom? Like, my mom, no. And a police car happened to turn and come on the scene, and the police officer was with a DUI task force. So when he got out of the car, the video cameras started running in his car. So I actually have everything that happened there on the scene on video, which for me was quite something to look back and see. But from my memory, from my perspective, when I was laying on the ground, there wasn't a thought of, would I lose my legs? Would I not? The pain that I felt was isolated in my lower back, and I didn't know anything about amputation, so I was thinking, oh, I'm a spinal cord injury. I've broken my back. But beyond that, it was more like, I'm going to die. And I had a near-death experience when I was a child, when I was 9 years old, and as I fell myself, weird to say, but like, you feel yourself leaving your body. And as I felt that sensation, I was trying to hold on. I was like just bombarded with all these images of my mom and my dad and my brother and my best friend Meredith. And it was like, oh my God, life is so good. I am not ready to leave. And that was my prayer in that moment, like, God, please let me live. Please let me live. And, I often say after the fact that if I'd have known I was going to lose both my legs, I would have gotten more specific in that prayer, live and keep my legs. But that was what I had to deal with, when I found out in ICU that the only thing the doctors could do to save my life was to amputate both of my legs. It was like, okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, my legs are gone, but the prayer was answered. I asked God for my life, and I'm here. So I'm going to give thanks for that. I'm going to show up in a big way. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to show up. I'm going to deal with this. And at that time in my life, I had just graduated from USC. I loved being a film student and running around town with a photo camera and video camera. And now, all of a sudden, these visions were coming to me in ICU that I was starting to comprehend what teachers in film school had wanted to impress upon us. And that is, you're just college kids. You're not directors. I went to school with a lot of auteurs, you know what I mean? And they would hammer us down like, you need life experience. You need to get out and experience. And I'm like, this is it, man. I'm in Harbor UCLA Trauma Center with my legs just cut off. I went through a metal detector to get to the operating room. This is it, man. I am in the heat of the action. I better start filming this. And that's what I did. My college professor actually brought me a video camera, which was a big deal, and I started shooting. The camera gave me so much power for two reasons. When I held the camera, I was anchored in the memories of my recent past, who I was, and that made me feel like, hey, I still am the same person. I love to shoot, and I'm shooting, so what's the difference? I'm doing it in a wheelchair. Now I'm my own human dolly. We're looking for wheelchairs to be our dolly at film school. Now I'm in one, And the other thing the camera gave me was, it gave me a feeling of control when everything was so out of control, because I could pick what I wanted to shoot, and I saw people change, especially doctors, especially medical staff. They changed when I filmed them. Either they became more vulnerable and they really opened up to me, or you could see them becoming, defensive and holding their position about, well, this is our medical diagnosis, and this is what you have, and this is, what you've got to face. And I would kind of laugh at them and say, well, how the hell do you know what I'm up against? You have legs. I'm like, let's work together here. I'm going to learn, and you're going to observe and give me feedback, and hopefully we can break through and make something of this. Did I answer the question? I got way off. I told you.
Yeah. So.
When you reach a certain amount of success in your sport, what I found is that people want to interview you and they want to find out about, what makes you tick as an athlete. And I often get asked the question, who's your hero? My hero is my mom. She was the one I most looked up to growing up. And because she was so young, by the time I became an adult, we were actually more friends than anything. And she really believed in me, and she did so much for my brother and I to provide us with a blank canvas. This is your life, and I want you to create and be, not in this generation me way, like what we're talking about today, because it was always rooted in, discipline, manners, it was anchored in hard work. Nothing comes easy. But she also balanced that with giving us permission to express ourselves and follow our heart and our passions, and to really talk intimately about that as a family. And when my accident happened, my mom was like, okay, this, she pulled out all the stops as a mother. She never left the hospital. Wasn't so comfortable to sleep there. And she made the best of the situation. My memories of the hospital were having difficulty falling asleep, and my mom was always there. And when I would wake up, it was always at 6 a.m. And I would usually have some kind of post-traumatic episode, and I'd really be startled awake, and she'd be there. And if she wasn't there, because she did have to have her coffee in the morning, she would always leave a little note on my table that said, you know, something like, "Went to get my poor man's mocha. Love you, Steph. I'll be right back." The poor man's mocha, for those of you who ever have to spend time in the hospital, is just, you know, regular, horrible hospital coffee and hot cocoa. And it can get you through just about anything. But my mom was there, and she was my everything. She was my confidant. It was like I would get this information about the medical diagnosis, and I would turn to her. That's who I consulted with. My dad was still living in Pennsylvania. My mom just uprooted. It's like house, job, everything. Forget that. I'm here. I'm with my daughter. And my dad just wasn't in a position that he could do that. And so it did all fall on my mother, but she took it on in such a profound way. And the other aspect of what was going on that I'm, you know, still legally not at liberty to talk about was the lawsuit. And that was incredibly difficult on me to see, you know, a young driver of a car who happens to be the son of a sheriff who tested positive for alcohol and pot, like, get off with no criminal charges. The California legal system is just as complicated as the TV shows make it, and I was living it. And it was desperately hard on top of everything that we were going through. That's my response. It was like my mother and I were so close in this. I wasn't going through it alone. She was going through it with me. And, you know, I could feel from her that she would give me her legs. She said, when I went into surgery, she made it to the hospital. Somehow my friend Meredith, who is horrible with directions, got the two of them to Harbor. And my mom came in to the hospital, and you know, she was frantic, like, my daughter was in this car accident. I've got to find her. I've got to find her. And as I was on the gurney with the seat collar on and everything, legs mangled in the mask suit, going down the hallway to surgery, she was at the other end, and she saw my hair. And I heard her start screaming, "That's my daughter, that's my," and I'm like, "That's my mom," you know? And I looked to the vascular surgeon who was walking in with me. We're talking, that's not normal. You know, we're talking as we're going into surgery. And I looked at him and I said, "That's my mom." And he goes, "She can't see you right now." And there were, I didn't know, but there were people holding her back. And she said, "That's my baby, I have to touch her." And I called out to her, "Mom, I'm gonna be okay." And I turned to the doctor, and I don't remember saying this, but he told me, I said, "Be sure to give my mother a Valium." He did not give my mother a Valium, and she waited for 9 painful hours with my best friend in that outside the operating room. And she said, "You know, I went through every memory of you as a child, as a soccer player, as a dancer. You know, how are you going to live? How are you going to go on? You know, you weren't going to be able to experience all of those things in the way that you knew anymore." And then I was devastated by that. I think her telling me she was the one that told me, "Steph, your legs are gone," I couldn't have taken that news from anyone else. You know, it's like I heard it from my mom, and it's like, "Okay, Mom, but I'm here, and you're here, so it's gonna be okay." And we went through a lot, you know. It's so hard to, I really made my mom mad with the whole video thing. because my mother is not a filmmaker. She wants, and here, you know, I turned my hospital room into a set, and I wanted to shoot everything. And Mom, take, you know, get the camera, get that, do that. She's like, no. And we would fight over that, but, you know, she actually captured some pretty amazing stuff. And 3 years in and out of the hospital, 11 reconstructive surgeries, learning how to walk with prosthesis, getting surgeries to try to fix that and make that a possibility, and wheelchair therapy. I mean, just books and volumes of things that we went through, emotional stuff. And at the same time, it would always come back to the joy of, well, you're here, and I'm here, and we appreciate the simple things. She loves the ocean, so we would, you know, go to the ocean, have a cup of coffee, and just, you know, the feel of her hand in mine, you know. When I met Marcel and I started skiing, I had to bring my mom to Park City. Now, she had never skied, and she absolutely hates the cold. So this was like, you, out of all the sports in Southern California, you're gonna pick skiing? Are you nuts? You know? And that weekend was the best weekend, because Marcel did teach my mom how to ski, and we spent the time together here in Park City. And I didn't know that would be the only time that we'd ever ski together. My mom started having back pain. She was 49 years old. I said, you're 49. It's a tough world out there. There's lots of stress. Everybody has back pain. Go see a doctor. And she called me after that doctor visit, and she said, I was really busy at the time. And she said, I've been diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And I said, well, for sure, you spend too much time outside in the sun. Myeloma, you know, those cancers all sound the same. And I actually flew to North Carolina the next day to shoot a movie. And while I was on the set, I just happened to look up multiple myeloma on the internet. I had some downtime. It was not skin cancer. I'll never forget what I read on the screen. It said, multiple myeloma, a fatal, incurable form of cancer. And I was just like, what? Not my mom. Not now. And she immediately went into the hospital and had chemotherapy and dialysis, and I was there. You know, I left what I was doing. I was suddenly in Omaha where she was living, and it was like, man, this is my chance to give back. You know, for everything she did for me in the hospital, now I can be there for her as her advocate and talking to doctors, and because she wasn't physically able to do so. I mean, her situation deteriorated very rapidly. And within 3 weeks after the diagnosis, my mom passed away. It was on November 22nd, which was the day Kennedy was shot. And I was watching the news and remembering how my mom had told me where she was when Kennedy was shot. And the nurse came into the TV room and said, if you'd like to say goodbye to your mom, you need to do so now. And I remember thinking, as I was wheeling down the hallway, I was thinking, I'm not going to say goodbye, because there is no goodbye when you have a love like this. There is no goodbye. And I watched my mother take her last breath, and I made up my mind right then that I was going to continue to ski race, and I was going to become a champion, and I would hope to make her proud.
Great. Take a little break.
Yeah.